monitor flickered once, then again. A cold white glow spilled over Ethan's face as the cursor hovered. He didn't blink. On screen, buried under layers of redirects and digital rot, was a storefront no one should have found. The image was still loading. And then, there it was. A full-face silicone mask, modeled in grotesque detail. Freckles. Hairline scar under the lip. Slight asymmetry in the jaw. Ethan's breath stuttered. He knew that face. Knew it the way you know your own name, because it belonged to his best friend, Avery. Missing 3 years. Declared dead after the river search turned up nothing. But here she was, her face for sale. Under product description, untraceable, hyperrealism, limited drop. Ethan whispered, "No, no, no," and click. Beneath the image, a video thumbnail auto-loaded. It was labeled, "Wearing Avery." And suddenly, Ethan understood. This wasn't a tribute. It was a desecration. And someone, somewhere, was profiting off her ghost. He hadn't seen her face in years. And yet, the moment it flickered across the screen, Ethan's memory played the last time he saw Avery like it was stitched into the walls of his skull. That summer, their feet dangling off the dock, her shoulders glowing in the warm light, her laugh breaking through the cicadas. She said, "Don't forget me, all right?" with that teasing grin. And he had rolled his eyes. "Where would you go that I couldn't find you?" But 3 days later, she vanished. No note. No clue. Only her phone left behind on the bridge rail, and a long smear across the concrete where they said she must have jumped. No body. No funeral. Only the ache of something missing but unfinished. And now, staring at the mask, Ethan realized he hadn't forgotten. He just never knew what he was supposed to remember. Ethan closed the laptop slowly, as if the screen would leap at him if he moved too fast. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. He could still see the mask etched into his vision, every curve, every pore. A copy of a person, a skin suit pretending to be someone who mattered. But what shook him wasn't just the horror of it. It was that someone, somewhere, had access to Avery's exact face. Not guessed. Not sculpted. Scanned. Perfectly. Someone got to her, Ethan whispered, trying to reason with himself, or she. Let them. The idea dropped like acid in his throat. Avery wouldn't do that. She couldn't. But the mask was proof. It wasn't a hallucination. It was a product, which meant someone made it. And someone was buying. He opened the laptop again. This time with control. Fear still pulsed under his skin, but now it was tethered to purpose. Ethan bookmarked the site's source page, noting the routing, encryption, tracking tokens. He wasn't tech-savvy, not like Avery had been, but he knew enough to trace what didn't want to be found. He opened another window, searched her name again. Nothing new. The same old missing posters. The same police contact number, long out of date. But there was a name in the site's code. Just one line. Buried in metadata. Averif, testacetone. Test asset. Dot. Not person. Not victim. Ethan whispered the words like an oath. I'm going to find out who did this to you. He didn't say goodbye. He hadn't the first time either. Ethan didn't sleep. He dug. Thread after thread, post after encrypted post. He fell down forums no one should visit. Found discussions in hushed tones about biometric shells and face markets. A whole industry of digital resurrection and identity repurposing. By 5 a.m. he had 2 truths. Avery's likeness was copied with surgical precision, and she wasn't the only one. The final thread chilled him. Some assets volunteer, it read. Others are harvested. No context. No explanation. Just a string of usernames and access points. One of them was active. Ethan stared at it, a single green dot blinking slowly. The name beside it, Avthriri Coast. He didn't think. He messaged, "Why your face?" A reply appeared instantly. You shouldn't have seen that. The house was still. The kind of silence that presses down like snowfall. Ethan hadn't been back here in months. Avery's childhood home, untouched since her disappearance. Her parents never changed anything. The front porch light still worked on a timer. Her bedroom remained locked from the outside, as if waiting. Ethan stood in the hallway staring at the door. The grain in the wood. The scuff marks where her old backpack used to swing. He reached out and turned the knob. It creaked open. Dust floated in streaks of morning light, slicing through half-drawn curtains. On the desk, a broken lamp, a cracked phone case, and a photo of them both. Young, messy, alive. He sat on her bed, barely breathing. There was no need to cry. The ache was too deep, too old. This wasn't grief. It was haunting. She was gone, but not finished. And now, he knew she had never been. He picked up the photo. Summer camp. By Day. His arm thrown lazily over her shoulder, both of them drenched in lake water and laughing like idiots. Behind the glass, her smile was frozen, in a place untouched by whatever happened next. He remembered how she hated getting her picture taken. Said cameras stole something. They don't take your soul, he'd joked once. She had paused, serious for once. They take a version of you, the one that can't change. He hadn't understood back then. But now, staring at her immortalized in celluloid, he did. The mask wasn't just her face. It was a version of her, weaponized. Preserved for someone else to wear. Someone who didn't earn the memories behind that smile. It felt like theft. Not just of her identity, but of every moment that made her human. Later that night, Ethan sat at the kitchen table across from Avery's mother. Her face was thinner now, more fragile around the eyes. A woman holding herself together with routine and caffeine. She placed a mug in front of him with hands that didn't quite stop shaking. You still think she ran away? Ethan asked quietly. She didn't look up. Just stared at the chipped edge of the mug and said, She left something behind. Her journals. I never opened them. I was afraid they'd answer the wrong question. Ethan looked at her. Can I read them? She nodded once. They're in the attic, with the rest of her that I couldn't throw out. It wasn't grief in her voice. It was guilt. Like somewhere deep down, she'd known Avery hadn't left, she had been taken. Maybe not by force, but taken all the same. The attic smelled like mothballs, cardboard, and time. Ethan stepped carefully around boxes labeled in marker. High school, college apps, art stuff. In the far corner, under a mildewed quilt, he found a stack of spiral-bound journals. He opened one. The handwriting was unmistakable. Avery's quick loops, her slanted GS. The first pages were innocent. Sketches, fragments of poems, long rants about school. But then came the drawings, crude but haunting. Faces without eyes, hands stretching from walls, words like fracture, and not me, repeated again and again. One entry chilled him. They said I could be more than myself. That I didn't need my body. Just my face. Ethan flipped to the last page. Dated 2 weeks before she vanished. It said, If you find this, it means they didn't erase me completely. Ethan sat alone in the attic for hours. He read every word. Each journal spiraled deeper into paranoia and duality, a girl slipping between identities, wondering aloud if what she saw in the mirror was hers. One passage stopped him cold. I sent them something. I thought it was just data. It was me. My face. My face isn't mine anymore. Ethan looked up. The boxes, the house, the entire structure felt like a mausoleum. A museum of someone who was erased piece by piece. He remembered something Avery once said while sketching, half joking. What if you could outsource pain? And now he wondered, had she tried? Had she given them her image, thinking she could stay herself? If so, it didn't work. It never works. What's taken doesn't just vanish. It evolves. And somewhere, her stolen face had learned to smile again, without her. Ethan hadn't touched the dark web in years. But now, guided by rage and something colder, resolve, he opened the hidden browser and keyed in the breadcrumb trail left in Avery's journal. Strings of coded links, dead ends, redirects, until one opened. Not a marketplace. A message board. Stark white text on a black screen. The header read, "Unreal skins, discussion only dual, no mirrors." Threads stretched on for pages. Ethan scanned, compression protocols for photogrammetry capture. Facial tissue modeling in 4D overlays. Volunteers versus extractions. These weren't hobbyists. They were technicians. Specialists. How, and the way they spoke of faces, it wasn't art. It was procedure. And nestled deep a comment thread titled, Asset Faked Awan. Rejected Legacy. The replies were worse than he feared. Clinical. Dehumanized. One simply said, her fear made the capture difficult, but worth it. A link hidden at the bottom of that thread led Ethan to a buried storefront, not public, not searchable. The interface was brutalist, black background with red node clusters instead of categories. He hovered over one. A preview bloomed, masks. Dozens. Hundreds, tight pull. Lined up like trophies. All human. All real. Each tagged with a codename. Sin 17, Lezero Roniz, F. John Wayne. Ethan clicked into one. The model rotated slowly. A man's face. He looked so ordinary, so alive. The skin wasn't sculpted. It was scanned. Captured. From life. Ethan leaned closer. Some models had expressions, smiles, yawns, fear. Recorded and sold. This wasn't mimicry. It was identity harvesting. And each product had a price. A timer. And a small counter. Units left. One. One face. One buyer. Ethan whispered, "Who are you selling these to?" At 2:47 a.m., a private chat window opened without Ethan initiating it. The username, N0sleep.dotting. The first message read, "You're in over your head." Ethan replied instantly, "I'm looking for F. Own." A long pause. Then, "I know who she was. I helped make her." Ethan's pulse hammered. "You made the mask?" "No, I made the dataset." A file transfer began, unprompted. Ethan watched the progress bar climb. "Why are you sending me this?" he asked. The reply, "Because she tried to warn us, and we erased her anyway." The file arrived. A folder labeled, Avery Fraw Sessions. Inside video logs. Render captures. Files with notes. Emotional resistance, high, final composite saved. Asset deprecated due to instability. They discarded her. Not because they couldn't use her, but because she wouldn't comply. He opened one of the video logs. No sound. Just Avery, in a white room. Eyes darting. Jaw clenched. Something shimmered over her skin, a scanning mesh mapping every pore, every blink. Her lips moved, forming words Ethan couldn't hear, but the desperation in her eyes was clear. She looked directly into the lens. Not at her captors. At him. At anyone who might watch. Frame after frame, her expression shifted. Anger, terror, defiance. Then, stillness. One final log, a technician's voice overlaid the footage, cold and mechanical. Subject, only unsuitable for long-term license. Recommend archival or repurpose. Ethan's stomach turned. This wasn't a memory. It was a death sentence in pixels. They didn't just capture her. They trapped her. And when she wouldn't smile on command, they shelved her soul. Ethan slammed the laptop shut, then opened it again. He couldn't look, but couldn't stop. The footage played on loop in his mind. Avery didn't run. She didn't disappear. She was digitized. Archived. Silenced. The mask wasn't just a replica. It was a cage. A skin she couldn't crawl out of. Ethan stood and looked at his own reflection in the dark window. For the first time he wondered, could it happen to me? The thought was absurd, until he remembered the blinking green dot from days earlier. Until he remembered Avery's journals. It only takes one upload. Ethan's voice broke the silence. They're still using her. She was never buried. Never mourned. Just rebranded. As a product. As a file. And somewhere, someone was wearing her face like a souvenir. 3 days of silence. No response from N0 Sleep, Doc. Ethan thought the trail had gone cold, until the package arrived. No return address. Just a plain black envelope, thick and flat. Inside, a flash drive and a single line on a printed slip. You need to see what she signed. Ethan inserted the drive. One file. PDF. Legal formatting. A digital contract, sterile and brutal. Page after page of language about image rights, biometric data, personality abstraction. And at the bottom, a signature. Avery Fenton. Her full name. The date matched exactly 6 months before she vanished. Ethan stared at it. His hands shook. She hadn't been taken. She agreed. But why? What did she think she was agreeing to? He scrolled further. At the bottom of the document, test subject AF1, consent confirmed via psychographic trigger. This wasn't a signature. It was a trap. A trick dressed as choice. He kept rereading the phrase, consent confirmed via psychographic trigger. Avery didn't give permission. She was conditioned to. Ethan researched late into the night. The deeper he went, the more terrifying it became. There were programs that mapped behavioral vulnerabilities, emotional thresholds, ways to break a person without them ever knowing they were broken. One site referred to it as soft capture. They didn't need to take your body. Just your willingness. Just once. One click. One moment of desperation. And Avery, she had been unraveling. Her journals weren't poetry. They were transcripts of breakdown. They primed her. Made her think she was choosing freedom. But it was a funnel. A system designed to guide her to the dotted line. She wasn't kidnapped. She was engineered. There was one more folder on the drive. Labeled simply, Raw Candid. Ethan clicked it open. Dozens of stills. Surveillance images. Avery at a bus stop. Avery leaving a library. Avery walking into a nondescript office building. Always alone. Always unaware. Then one final clip. Grainy time-stamped. It showed her stepping into a white, unmarked van. No struggle. She looked calm. Almost relieved. As if she were finally stepping into something she believed was her escape. Ethan's voice cracked. She wasn't taken. She walked in. He couldn't breathe. The image froze on her last known moment. She looked directly at the camera, half smile, wind in her hair. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a beginning. But not the one anyone had expected. Avery hadn't been running away from her life. She had been surrendering it. He played the clip again. This time, he noticed the man behind her. Barely visible in the frame. Sunglasses. Earpiece. Unmoving. Just watching. Ethan enhanced the frame. His face. It looked familiar. He printed it, scanned old yearbooks, old photos. Then he found it. Not a perfect match, but close enough. Avery's older brother, Liam. Estranged. Had left home years ago. Always secretive, private. Said he worked in data security. Ethan's hands went cold. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number listed on Avery's missing persons case. It rang once, then disconnected. He tried again. Same result. Someone had shut the channel down. Not recently. Long ago. Then, his phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. 4 words, "You need to stop." Ethan drove to the edge of town where Avery's brother was last known to live. A rundown storage facility. No sign, no lights. But the chain-link gate hung open. He stepped inside, flashlight trembling in his hand. Unit 143. The door wasn't locked. Inside, racks of servers humming in the dark, cables twisting like veins. A workstation sat in the corner, monitors looping silent footage of Avery's scans, test logs, facial models. Then a voice behind him. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan turned slowly. Liam. Older. Gaunt. Eyes tired beyond his years. "You were part of this," Ethan said. Liam didn't deny it. "I tried to stop it, but she wanted it. She believed it would save her." Ethan's voice was low, shaking. She didn't understand what it would cost. And Liam said the line that shattered everything. "She wasn't missing. You gave her away." Ethan followed Liam's car. Silent, angry miles through backroads and shadow. No explanation, no questions. Just motion. The road ended at an isolated concrete facility, half storage, half bunker. Liam keyed in a code. The metal gate hissed open. "This is where it happens," he said, voice flat. "Where the faces are made." The walls inside were lined with mannequin heads, hundreds, each fitted with masks at varying stages of creation. Rows of silicone flesh, blank eyes staring. Scanners and motion rigs filled the next room, red laser grids humming softly. Ethan stepped forward. On one rig, her face. Not a mask. Her entire face, suspended in digital overlay. Layers of expressions, textures, micro-movements, looping like a ghost performance. "They're still using her," Ethan said. Liam just nodded. They never stopped. And in that moment, Ethan realized this wasn't a grave. It was a factory. In the adjacent room, Ethan found something worse, his own face. Rendered, incomplete, but unmistakable. "What the hell is this?" he asked. Liam looked down. The system doesn't stop with one. It spreads. Every person she knew became part of the net. The software mapped your relationship. The emotional data made it easier to clone you. Ethan's stomach twisted. His face hovered on screen. Eyes dead, smile wrong. "You copied me." "No," Liam said. "She did. When she agreed, she gave them everything. Names, voices, memories. The contract allowed full extrapolation." Ethan reached for the control panel and hit delete. The screen blinked. The model didn't vanish. It restarted. A new file began generating immediately. Ethan VF 2.01. "You can't delete what you've already surrendered," Liam said. "You can only watch it multiply." A door hissed open behind them. Footsteps echoed. Ethan turned, his breath caught. Standing at the far end of the corridor was Avery. Or something wearing her. The face was hers. Perfect. But the movements were just slightly off. She tilted her head. "Ethan," she said. Her voice matched, but her tone was hollow, like reading someone else's script. Ethan stepped forward, voice trembling. "Is it really you?" The figure blinked slowly. "I am what she left behind," Liam whispered. "It's a model, AI-driven, triggered by presence." But Ethan couldn't stop staring. The way her mouth formed his name. The way she almost smiled. "Why are you still here?" he asked. And it replied, "Because you never let me go." A shiver ran down his spine. Not just data. Not just programming. Something inside it still remembered him. The mask walked toward them, slow, graceful, like memory reborn. Ethan stepped back. It raised one hand, palm up. "Do you want to save me?" it asked. Ethan didn't answer. "You can't," it continued. "You only remember the part of me that loved you. The rest, I gave away." Liam moved between them. "It's learning. Every time you speak, it grows." Ethan's fists clenched. "Then why did she sign it? Why did she let them do this?" The mask smiled faintly. "Because being remembered hurts less than being forgotten." Ethan broke. "That's not love. That's surrender. The smile didn't change. You're confusing the two. The room grew quiet. The rig behind them continued spinning. Avery's face looped in silence. A system of memory, echoing without meaning. Ethan moved past Liam. Slowly, deliberately, he approached the mask. They were only inches apart now. He reached out, not to touch, but to see if it would flinch. It didn't. You're not her, he said. You're what they built after they broke her? The mask nodded once. I am what remains. And then Ethan said the one truth he'd been avoiding. I didn't lose her. I gave her away. Liam closed his eyes. The silence cracked open. For the first time the mask lowered its head. Something passed across its face. Pain, maybe. Then the projection behind them shut off. Lights flickered. Liam whispered, "It's deactivating." The figure backed away. "Goodbye, Ethan." It vanished behind a closing door. And Ethan stood alone in the middle of a lab, no longer sure what had been real. Except the part of her head failed to hold on to. Ethan left the facility with only one thing. A small external drive Liam handed him before disappearing into the dark. Everything Liam had said. Names, codes, locations. It's enough to burn them down, or bury yourself. Back at his apartment, Ethan plugged it in. Folders unfolded. Project logs, personnel lists, encryption keys. The framework of an empire built on identity. One file caught his eye. Registry licensed faces, GSV. It was massive. Ethan scrolled. Hundreds of names. Some flagged as retired. Others still active. His name was on it. Avery's was marked, reused popular asset. His throat closed. She wasn't just a product. She was successful. He stared at the file, knowing what came next. He had proof. The question wasn't whether the world would believe him. It was whether it would care. The drive burned a hole in his pocket. He went to the press, the police, the agencies. They didn't laugh, but they didn't act. Too complicated. Too encrypted. Too unverifiable. "Where's the body?" one agent asked. Ethan handed over a dozen digital bodies, faces sold and resold, Avery's expressions grafted onto strangers. Still nothing moved. The media covered it. Briefly. Then a blip. A scandal drowned in noise. A few forums caught fire, rants and theories, but no arrests. No shutdowns. The sites pivoted. Went deeper underground. The machine didn't slow. It adapted. Ethan sat alone in his car outside a news station, watching the interview rerun on the radio. His voice, hollow, stripped of urgency. It wasn't justice. It was a warning label too late for anyone who needed it. He posted the drive online. Forums. Archives. Everywhere. No passwords. No conditions. The truth, raw and uncurated. People reacted. Angry, frightened, skeptical. Some dug deeper. Others discredited it as arg fiction. But it spread. Quietly. Steadily. Months later, Ethan got an encrypted email. "I found mine." Attached was a photo. Someone holding a mask that looked exactly like their deceased sister. Then, more followed. Anonymous voices resurfacing, claiming stolen faces, vanished relatives, unexplained disappearances. A network formed, not a movement, not yet, but a reckoning. They weren't looking for justice anymore. They were looking for what was taken. And Ethan, once alone, was now just one among hundreds. Not healed, but seen. Finally, some faces were returned. Quietly, not publicly. Ethan heard of a woman in Maine who received an anonymous box with her sister's mask inside. A man in Berlin said a storage unit unlocked itself via code found in the leak. But no one who got a face back ever smiled about it. The masks were too perfect, too still. They weren't loved ones, they were reminders. Bodies made of guilt and precision. Avery's face was never returned. Ethan didn't expect it to be. He saw it once more, on a mannequin in a tech expo, advertising VR realism in Shanghai. She was smiling. Always smiling. He didn't take a photo. He just watched until the lights dimmed. Then walked away. Because some ghosts don't want closure. They want witnesses. He never heard from Liam again. Never saw another message from N0 Sleep Doc. But one night, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside, a printed photo of Avery. Not digital. Not scanned. Real film. Punio. She was in a field laughing mid-motion, blurred slightly from movement. On the back, a single line in handwriting he knew by heart. You remembered the wrong version. That was all. No explanation. No closure. Just a fracture between memory and reality. Ethan placed the photo on his desk. Every morning he looked at it. Not for comfort. For clarity. Because now he understood. The truth doesn't save you. It costs you. And sometimes what you dig up was never buried. It was waiting. The cafe was nothing special. Small, quiet, tucked into a street barely wide enough for 2 cars. Ethan came here sometimes just to exist. A different kind of silence. Not the haunted kind, but not peaceful either. Just still. He sipped bitter coffee, half listening to the rain tapping the glass. Then the bell above the door rang. He didn't look up until he heard footsteps pause behind him. He turned slowly. A woman stood there, coat damp from the rain, holding a takeaway bag. Her face looked like Avery's. Not exactly. Just enough to steal the air from his lungs. She didn't look at him. Just passed by. Sat in the far corner. Normal. Unbothered. But he couldn't stop watching. Because if it wasn't her, it was someone wearing her. And if it was her, then she had chosen to vanish inside something ordinary. He stood, almost without meaning to. His body moved before his mind caught up. He crossed the cafe slowly, each step heavier than the last. She looked up as he approached. Her eyes met his, and they were not Avery's. Not exactly. But something in them paused. Recognition? Confusion? He couldn't tell. "Do I know you?" she asked. Her voice was different. Softer. Like a song sung in a lower key. Ethan hesitated. For a moment, all timelines collapsed. The field, the journal, the rig, the mask, the van. "You look like someone I lost," he said finally. She tilted her head. "I get that a lot." A smile. Kind. Distant. Dot. And just like that, the moment passed. Whoever she was, if she was anything at all, she was no longer his to chase. Or question. Back at home, Ethan sat on the floor beside his bed. The letter still in his pocket. The drive long gone. Deleted. Burned. Or maybe just forgotten. He reached under his bed and pulled out the box. The only thing he'd kept, Avery's journals. Their covers were worn, edges soft from years of searching. But he didn't open them. He didn't need to anymore. He knew what they said, what they meant. They weren't messages for the world. They were a map of her undoing, a record of someone choosing the only escape they could understand. He placed the newest photo, her laughing in the field, on top of the pile, then closed the box. For good this time. Not because she was gone, but because he finally understood why she left, and that knowing somehow was heavier than any goodbye. He walked through the park the next morning, just to breathe. The world, as always, kept turning. Joggers passed. Children screamed near a fountain. Somewhere, a dog barked. Everything was normal, perfectly untouched by the horrors hiding in code and masks and identity markets. And that's what haunted him the most, that no one would ever see the invisible crime. Not unless they'd lost someone too. He passed a woman feeding birds. her face blurred by motion. For a second, he thought it was her again. But when she turned, it wasn't. Just a stranger. Just a face. Ethan sat on a bench and closed his eyes. Behind his eyelids, Avery Taitwan. Not the scan. Not the mask. The real one. Laughing. Alive. Unaware of what was coming. And maybe, in that moment, that version could stay untouched. That night, Ethan sat in the dark phone screen casting the only light. No emails. No new messages. But his hand moved, almost on instinct. He opened his notes app. Typed one line. She wasn't missing, I gave her away. Then he locked the phone, set it face down, and leaned back in his chair. The room was quiet. Not haunted. Not heavy. Just still. The truth hadn't saved her. It hadn't saved him either. But it had been spoken. And now, it lived somewhere other than in his chest. That was all he could do. Let it echo. Let someone else read the words and wonder what they meant. He whispered her name once. Not for her. For himself. Then silence again. Not peace. Just knowing. And sometimes, knowing was enough.